Wow, you all came back. But after all that driving discussion, you called me gone. So a question I get asked often is, do you have to tack? Yeah, you absolutely have to tack. The only way to zigzag your way up through the wind is to tack. Otherwise, you're just going to hit the side of the river. Do you have to jibe? I would like to tell you that the answer is yes, because you have to learn to jibe. It's very important. It's part of sailing. It's all part of the fun of sailing. But in reality, the answer is no. And I'll show you how you might not jibe if you really don't want to jibe. One thing to mention, though, is that when you tack, you're going to be tacked a whole bunch of times. If the wind is properly blowing from the Mass Ave Bridge down to the Longfellow Bridge, you could tack 6, 7, 8, 9, 27 times as you're going upriver, depending on how strong the wind is blowing and the direction of the wind. When you then come around and go downwind, you might only jibe once, you might jibe twice. You're never going to jibe as many times during your sailing day as you're tacking, simply because you're going downwind and you don't have to zigzag. But the question is, do you have to jibe? I would like you to jibe, and it's important to learn how to jibe, but if for whatever reason it's too windy that day, or too shifty, there's too many boats around you, whatever reason it may be, and I even do this sometimes, you just don't feel like jibing. Normally when you're going downwind, let's say you're over here, you want to get to over here. So that's your final destination. What you would normally do is you bear off, and you jibe, and you'd be heading in that direction. And that's the proper way of doing it, and that's jibing. But if you just don't want to jibe, you can do what I call the chicken jibe. You can head the other direction. So if you push the tiller toward the sail and start bringing the sail in, you'll start heading up, and keep bringing the sail in, and keep heading up. Eventually you're going to get to a close haul course, keep heading up. Eventually you're going to go through the eye of the wind, and you're going to tack, and you're going to bear off, and bear off, and bear off, and bear off, and eventually be in the exact same position. You've just gone all the way around the clock to do it. It's kind of like taking a left and a left and a left, take a right. So that's an option that you have if for whatever reason you just feel like you shouldn't be doing a jibe at that moment. And I've done this if it's really too windy or so on. But you really do have to put a jibe. But that's an option. A couple of things they ask on the test. Eventually, if I miss any question on the test, I'll pick up with them later. So one is how do you adjust to wind shifts when you're sailing close hauled, and how do you adjust the wind shifts when you're sailing free? What sailing free means is any position the boat can be in that's not close hauled. Okay? So again, I'm not going to give you the names of all these positions, but they're all called sailing free. And the reason that expression came about is that when you're in any of these positions, you're free to head up or bear off. When you're actually close hauled, you're not free to head up. Because if you head up, you're either going to come about or you're going to be stuck in irons. So you're not, quote unquote, free to head up. So all these other positions are called sailing free. So as far as the question on the test, how do you adjust to wind shifts when you're sailing close haul? The answer is simply with the tiller. Because when you're sailing close haul, your sail is always going to be at the exact same distance from you. It's going to be way in close. So if you're sailing close haul, your sail is always going to be right there. If suddenly the wind shifts, let's say the wind shifts such that it pushes you in the irons, all you have to do is use the tiller to get back into close haul. So how to adjust to wind shifts when you're sailing close haul is simply with the tiller, by steering. How do you adjust to wind shifts when you're sailing free? Well, if this boat is sailing free, and let's say you're aiming for something, like you're aiming for the Citgo sign over here, and the wind is behind you, and you're sailing free, everything's happy. But then suddenly the wind shifts, like let's say over to here, or over the other way, and basically what that does is it puts your sail in the wrong position for that angle. The way you adjust to it is by adjusting the sail. You still want to keep heading for the Citgo sign, but you adjust the sail, so let's say it stops luffing, when it's back on the verge of a luff. So when sailing free, you adjust to wind shifts by adjusting the sail. When sailing close haul, you adjust to wind shifts simply by steering. Another question I forgot to mention is how do you get your boat to start moving in the first place? So when you're at your dock and you rig your sail, and you're all set to go, when you do that, your sail's going to be all the way out, and you're not going to be going anywhere. So to get your sail to start moving ahead, once someone's given you a push out and you untie, you bring your sail in. You can say you bring it into the verge of the luff, but the important thing is you bring your sail in and you straighten the tiller. So once you bring your sail in tight and you straighten the tiller, the wind will catch the sail and you'll be off sailing. So when they ask you how do you get your boat to start moving ahead, simply bring the sail in and straighten the tiller. Okay, let's talk about docking. So when you're all done with your sail, it's eventually time to come home. You have to go dock at the dock. So the questions on the test are simply, when docking, how do you decide which direction to land? The answer is simply toward the direction of the wind. You want your docking to be as gentle as possible, so if you go toward the wind as opposed to away from the wind, it'll be a more gentle landing. And then how do you come to a stop? The answer is put yourself into irons or get parallel to the dock and then gently nudge into the dock. That's pretty much the answer to the question on the text. But I'd like to teach you a couple more things about docking that you need to know when you're out there. So this is the community boating dock. And I know what you're thinking, that looks just like the Nassau Bridge. And in this case, the island is over here, and the Longfellow Bridge is over here. The wind is blowing that way. You pretty much know that you want to land toward the wind. You don't want to land this way, which is away from the wind. You want to land that way, which is toward the wind. So which way do you land the dock? Toward the wind. In reality, when you come in for a landing, there's always going to be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 boats already at the dock. So if all the boats at the dock are all facing that way, then you know to face that way too. So just go the same direction all the other boats are. Don't answer that question that way, but just do know that you just go the same direction everybody else is. The answer to the question is you go in the direction of the wind. And you want to give yourself enough room to land, especially as novices. Because regardless of how fast you're going, if you have enough room to get yourself parallel to the dock, you can then just nudge into the dock. You get rubber around the side of your boat, rubber on the dock, and you'll come to a stop. But you can't do that if you're trying to land in between these two boats over here. So it's much more tricky. So the more room you give yourself to the dock, especially when you're first starting out, the easier your landing will be. If you come in at the end of your sail, and it's just lots and lots and lots and lots of boats, and you don't have enough room to land, simply go back out. Bear off, head out, whatever it takes to get back out. Go sailing for 90 more seconds, wait for some boats to get out of your way, and then come back in. Give yourself a nice lot of room. Again, the more room you have, the more you can maneuver. There's 3 different scenarios the wind will be in when you come in for a landing. One will be blowing directly off the dock. If that's the case, you're going to sort of zigzag your way in by tacking, and then eventually kind of go into the wind and come to a landing and let your sail out and stop. Another way is the wind could be blowing directly along the dock. That's actually the easiest way, because you're coming in sort of on a close haul course, and just at the last minute, you just go into irons, go directly into the wind, and you'll just come to a nice even stop. I guess the trickiest way is when the wind is blowing directly toward the dock. In that case, you obviously can't land toward the wind, right? Because if you land toward the wind, you'll be landing backwards. So what you want to do in that scenario is you want to come in, and you want to start heading your boat toward the wind just to sort of slow down, and then getting closer and closer to the dock. Then when you get really close to the dock, you can let your sail all the way out with the wind blowing directly across the bow of your boat. And that's what's called the safety position. If the wind is blowing directly across the side of your boat and the sail is all the way out, there's no wind in the sail. There's no power to bring your sailboat forward. So all your sailboat is going to do is drift that way. Normally, if the wind were blowing directly across the side of your boat, you'd have the sail about halfway out, and your boat would be flying that way. That's called a beam reach. But if you let your sail all the way out, and the wind just blows directly, parallel along the boom, all that's going to happen is your sailboat will drift that way. So if the wind happens to be blowing in that direction, you get yourself kind of close to the dock by nudging into the wind, and eventually let your sail all the way out, safety position, and you'll drift right in. The only thing to be careful of when you do that is people standing on the dock. Because you can hit them with your boom. And they don't like that. So just be careful if you land that way with your boom, okay? So what happens when you dock? When you come in, the person that's in the dock house will make an announcement specifically toward your boat. You've probably heard that a whole bunch of times since you've been here. Your boat is going to have a number on it, on your sail. Let's say it's number 7. So you need to know what boat number you're on, what sail number it is. And they're going to make an announcement specifically to you, boat number 7. And they're going to tell you 2 different things. They're going to tell you which end of the dock to land on and what to do with your boat. The end of the dock over by the Longfellow Bridge is called the Longfellow end of the dock. The end of the dock over by the high-performance boats is called the Hyperdock or the high-performance end of the dock. So if they're going to say, boat number 7, please land at the Longfellow end of the dock, or please land at the high-performance end of the dock. They'll let you know which end of the dock to land on. Then they're going to tell you what to do with your boat. And there's one of 3 things you can do. One is they'll say, leave your sails up. That's the one you want to hear. You just leave your sails up, you tie up, and you leave. Or they'll say, furl your sail. And you all learn in rigging how to furl your sail. So you'll furl your sail around the boom, take the rudder out, put it in the boat, and leave your boat there. Or if they really just don't need any more boats that day, they'll say unrig, and you unrig your boat, and sometimes they might even have you pull it into the slip. So those are the 3 things you can do when you're docking. All right, let's talk about right-of-way rules. There are rules out there when 2 boats are approaching each other on a potential collision course. One boat has the right-of-way, the other one doesn't. blowing that way, I've got two boats. This boat is on a starboard tack because the wind is blowing over the starboard side of the boat. This boat is on a port tack because the wind is blowing over the port side of the boat. Now, quickly as an aside, the easiest way to figure out what tack you're on, and no one seems to teach people this, because you're always out there in a boat, and you ask people who has the right of way, and they try to look at the telltales and look at the wind. All you need to know is what side you're sitting on. If you're sitting as the skipper on the starboard side of the boat, you're on a starboard tack. It's that simple. Because the wind is always going to be blowing over the side that's pushing the sail. You'll always be opposite the sail. You'll always be on the side of the wind. Okay? So if you're sitting on the right side of the boat, your boat is on a starboard tack. If you're sitting on the left side of the boat, you're on a port tack. So that's the way of quickly knowing what tack I'm on. In this scenario, starboard tack and port tack, starboard has right of way over port. There's no scientific reason for that. They just had to pick one. So this boat on the starboard tack gets to keep going straight, and the boat that's on the port tack just has to get out of the way. Either by heading up, coming about, tacking, whatever it takes. The port tack boat has to get out of the way. Starboard has right of way over port. And notice when they ask you the question on the test, they ask it kind of as a trick question. They don't say which boat has the right of way. They say which boat must keep clear. So the port boat must keep clear of the starboard boat when they're both on the opposite tacks. But another scenario is you could both be on the same tack. In fact, you could both be on a starboard tack. So just because you're sitting on the right side of the boat, and just because your boat is on a starboard tack, doesn't necessarily mean you have the right of way. So you need to glance over and see what side of the boat that skipper is sitting on. If you're sitting on the right and he or she is sitting on the left, then you get the right of way, because then it's starboard over port. But you might both be sitting on the right side of the boat. In this scenario, you're both on a starboard tack. So which one has the right of way? In this case, you have to learn a couple more words. This boat is called the windward boat. And this boat is called the leeward or leeward boat. Meaning that this boat gets the wind first. It's on the windward side. So as the wind blows, it hits this boat before it hits this boat. This boat is sort of in the shadow or the shade of this boat. So in this case, the windward boat has a lot more maneuverability because it gets the wind stronger than the leeward boat, which means the leeward boat should have the right of way. Because the windward boat is easier to get out of the way, and the leeward boat can keep going straight. So when two boats are approaching a collision on the same tack, the windward boat has to get out of the way. Leeward boat has the right of way. Okay. Then they'll ask you what is community boating's cardinal rule of right of way, and it's basically just don't hit anything. If you just can't figure out who has the right of way, just get out of the way. Or if you're absolutely certain you've got the right of way, but the other person doesn't know, just get out of the way. So the phrase they like to use is, when in doubt, chicken out. So that's what they're going to want to hear for the answer to the question. Community boating's cardinal rule of right of way is, when in doubt, chicken out. So now let's talk about capsizing. We'll talk about why you might capsize and what to do when you capsize. And of course, the whole time we're talking about this, you can remember this image because it's all part of the fun of sailing. So why might you capsize? I would say 80% of capsizes occur when you're actually going downwind because it has something to do with the jibe. But about 20% of the time, maybe 25% of the time, capsizes can certainly occur when you're going upwind. And usually what happens when a capsize occurs going upwind, it's because a big gust of wind came up upon you and you weren't ready for it. So imagine that your boat is sailing upwind and you've got the sail kind of close in, so maybe you're on a close hauled course. When you're on a close hauled course and it's a pretty gusty day or a windy day, your boat will be heeling, which is tipping over, not over all the way, but it'll be tipping a little bit. And it's kind of exciting, it's kind of fun. It's particularly fun for the skipper, because the skipper's always going to be up on the side of the boat that's out of the water, but your crew might be like down here on the side of the boat that's in the water, and they're not having as much fun as the skipper. But anyway, you'll be heeling a lot. One of the questions on the test is, if your boat is heeling uncomfortably, what can you do? There's 3 things you can do to stop your boat from heeling. One is called hiking out. It's actually getting up with your body and sitting on the side of the boat and using your body weight to push the boat back down into the water, hiking out. The second one is simply let the sheet out. If you just let the sail out, you'll immediately right the boat because your sail's going to be close in when you're heeling. So if you just let the sheet through your fingers, let the sail out, your boat will stop heeling. And the other one is you can actually dip into irons a little bit. Don't get stuck in irons, but if you're like really heeling over and you're really close to the eye of the wind and you head up a little bit, you'll come back up and then you can bear off a little bit. So those are the 3 different ways of preventing or stopping heeling when it's bothering you.